Hello and welcome to a special carrier management video interview. My name is Laman. I'm a content editor at Insurance Journal, and I'm also a contributor here at Carrier Management. And I'm thrilled today to be joined by Dale Porfilio, Head of Personal and Commercial Lines Business Development at WTW. Dale, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, you led a really interesting and data-backed panel at the CAS RPM seminar earlier this week. And it focused on a topic that we're actively exploring at Carrier Management, and that's legal system abuse. So today, I'm excited to talk through some of the information that you and your colleagues discussed there, and also just to kind of pick your brain for a little bit over the next 15 to 20 minutes.
Happy to have the conversation.
Maybe just to start off, could you give me and our viewers just a little bit of information about your work at WTW?
Happy to do so. I joined WTW last summer to be focusing on our business development efforts. At the end of the day, we are here to serve the insurance industry. We've got consulting solutions, technology solutions, and we'd love to be able to help U.S. carriers more than we are before. So very much we are regularly out talking with the insurance industry, trying to understand the challenges that they're facing and saying, how can we help? And one of the topics that regularly comes up is legal system abuse and the challenges that it's causing both personal and commercial lines carriers at this point in time.
I want to start sort of at the very beginning, because at the very beginning, when you were laying out the goals of the event and what y'all were going to be talking about, it was very clear that y'all were going to be talking about legal system abuse through a systemic lens. And I think even your definition kind of encapsulates this, because your definition of the phenomenon, it extends beyond the economic impacts, of legal system abuse. And I just wanted to start our talk today by asking you if you could share your definition of legal system abuse with us and sort of explain why you conceptualize it the way that you do.
Certainly. I recommend using the definition that we codified at the Insurance Information Institute while I served as their chief insurance officer, which I did for the time before I arrived at WTW. The definition that we used is policyholder or plaintiff attorney practices that increase costs and time to settle insurance claims to the detriment of policyholders. That is a definition that was very much written and targeted to consumers and the policymaker audience. Within the insurance industry, we use various different names, and it's all for that concept of what is impacting claims beyond economics alone. But that term doesn't resonate with consumers and policymakers. And we ultimately want to make sure that they understand what it is and why it matters, because they have to be our partners in addressing this broadly to try to reduce the cost of insurance.
Yeah. Yeah. Just in general, what kinds of claims are the most vulnerable to this phenomenon?
Certainly the ones most vulnerable are your liability coverages or products that are targeted to liability. And the larger the limits, the more vulnerable. So think about general liability, products liability, commercial auto liability, as well as even personal auto liability. But again, the larger the limits, the more exposed. That said, even homeowners, a property coverage is not immune. Think about Florida and abuses that were running rampant up until 2 to 3 years ago. And a lot of people knocking on doors trying to get people to file roof claims when there may not have been roof damage there. So even homeowners can be part of this, but it really is liability coverages, the higher limits, the more the risk.
Oh, it makes sense. And it's what we've been seeing, what we've been hearing from the folks that we've been talking to as we've been exploring this issue. We were talking before the call, you and I, and something that I really appreciated about the panel that took place earlier this week was just the emphasis on data and numbers that you and your colleagues brought to that presentation. I wanted to ask you, when we talk about legal system abuse, we hear a lot about nuclear verdicts, which I know during your presentation you alluded to the fact that this is now a trademark term. And I just wanted to ask you, do you have any numbers or data that you can talk to me about, or talk to us today that show how these verdicts or just legal system abuse in general have impacted insurance companies?
Certainly. And I do think we very much wanted to bring a data-driven approach. And that's why, the colleagues I had join me on the panel, including Victoria Kilgore, who's the vice president of the Insurance Research Council, we wanted her to bring data about what she's been able to see in that organization on personal auto, one of the products impacted for sure. Rather than the term nuclear verdicts and the severity of 10 million or above, that's not a magical number. So I prefer to focus on the full range of claim severities. The reality is $10 million verdicts and above, they certainly make headlines. They are highly notable, but they're a small portion and a small number of the overall problem. So I'll point to, and I included in the presentation on Wednesday, A study that was most recently done by the Insurance Information Institute, or III as we abbreviate it, and the Casualty Actuarial Society, or CAS. This was published in November of last year. And it was going through an approach to estimate what is the total impact to the insurance industry losses over a decade in time. So that particular study was looking at data through year-end 2024, so it's the decade from 2015 to 2024. And the headline number, it's a range around that, but the center of that range is basically $250 billion, a very large number to think about how much more the insurance industry is paying to policyholders because of things like legal system abuse. And that's the key driver behind this study. And the four product lines that were included in that study are the four I mentioned earlier: general liability, product liability, commercial auto liability, and personal auto liability. So that doesn't even count things like medical medical insurances outside of this, whatever may be going on outside of the P&C space, as we refer to it. So it's certainly a very large number that we're talking about. And all of those losses at the end of the day have to get factored back into the price of insurance. So this is a key driver that makes insurance more costly, less affordable, and that ultimately impacts what consumers are paying every day.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge number. I'm realizing I probably should have asked this sooner, but why have we seen this phenomenon, I guess, kind of take the legs or become as big as it's becoming in recent years? Why are we seeing an increase of legal system abuse?
There's a lot of different views on that, and we could probably make an entire hour conversation of that. But I would focus on two. One is that the plaintiff bar has gotten more aggressive and expanded the tactics that they're using. So attorney advertising is certainly very prevalent, and there's nothing wrong with advertising, but it's the type of advertising that I think is the problem, and that's what I would refer to as exploitative. So it's very common that attorney advertisements make two promises: that they will get you more and that they will get it for you faster. But what research shows is that once you deduct for attorney fees, on average, the consumers that are bringing lawsuits actually get less net for their injury, and it takes longer. So to me, that's misleading advertising. And again, advertising, not inherently a problem. Misleading or exploitative advertising, that's a problem. The plaintiff bar is very much adapting their tactics to try to say how can they be more successful in generating increased claims and increased lawsuits. And they're also collaborating amongst themselves to share information to say what's working. The United States is an entrepreneurial country, and so what works in one place, you start to figure out how you can apply in a different place. And by the nature of how insurance is governed, we're not allowed to collaborate when it comes to sharing information. So each of us has to do things on our own. And so they have an advantage in being able to collaborate in a way that the insurance industry is not allowed to collaborate. It's not an even playing field. So I'll put that all in that category of the plaintiff attorney, more aggressive, creative tactics, and exploitative advertising as being problematic. The second broad area is I would refer to as societal change. And this is the way that people think differently about what is a reasonable recovery for an injury. And you think about, I'll point to television game shows. Once in a day, there was, shows that were talking about you could have winnings of $25,000 or $64,000. Now we talk about game shows that are million and even talking about billion-dollar wins. We have lotteries now that pay out in excess of $1 billion once in a while. So people are desensitized to the size of numbers. And when people think about, hey, this person's been injured, what is a reasonable recovery? People think a larger number than they ever thought before. It's not attached to the facts in many cases of what are the actual injuries and expenses incurred, but saying, what's a reasonable recovery, no matter what may have gone wrong? And that influences both when you're the injured party, when you're the claimant, but also if you do get down to a jury situation, what the 12 members of a jury are thinking. What is a reasonable recovery for an accident of type A, B, or C? So when you put that combination of plaintiff attorney behavior and that societal change, what people think is a reasonable claim for something, that is causing an environment where losses are going up and what we're paying out for certain types of claims are going up faster than economic inflation alone.
Yeah. Well, no, I thank you for outlining that for us. And I think that leads us to this last question, or this concluding question that I wanted to ask you, which is, during the panel, you spoke about some ways to combat legal system abuse. Those included education, legislative reforms, and increasing third-party litigation funding transparency. I guess maybe this is a two-parter. So I'd like to ask you, I mean, in what ways are we seeing organizations do this already? And then maybe in what ways is there room for improvement, or what ways can we see more of this?
Yeah, happy to do that in those two parts. Certainly, it is table stakes that the insurance industry trade associations are heavily engaged in trying to foster legislative and regulatory reform. So that's a key role for the industry and for society broadly. They can be a primary source of that education and pushing for legislative reform, one of which would be having mandatory transparency of third-party litigation funding, which again could be another hour discussion of its entirety. But the third member of our panel was Elena Karkovitz, who's a colleague of mine here at the WTW, and she was wanting to convey that other key piece that we think is essential, and that is bringing claims analytics to bear against the challenges of legal system abuse. It's been standard table stakes ever since I began my career as a pricing actuary that we've brought as a high-level complex analytics as we can to the pricing exercise. Saying, how do we price the differential in your risk versus my risk versus anybody else? But it's been far slower for us to bring those comparable level of analytics to the claim space. Saying, how can we help empower using data to help claims adjusters do their job better, to make sure that they are helping people be whole after bad things happen in life, whether it's an auto claim or anything else. So claims analytics is that key piece. And that's what Elena walked through on Wednesday morning, was a number of different ways that companies can bring data and models and analytics into the hands of claims adjusters to help them do their job more effectively, which is taking care of injured parties every day. So that's a key piece that we wanted to make sure that came through, that our attendees were able to pick up and take back to them with them to their respective workplaces.
Dale, I thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise on all these points that we discussed. It's been a pleasure to interview you.
And I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate you giving a little airtime to the issue. To the extent that we can further educate both consumers and policymakers about the challenges, what it is and why it matters, it's the better for all of us.
Well, thank you again for sharing everything that you did. And thanks for everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you watching. And until next time, take care.